Hi. Hey, how's it going? I didn't see you there. If you don't know who I am, well, I'm Deconverted Man. Usually I yell my name loud, but I don't feel like doing it, okay? I don't have to do it every time. You can't make me. Alright. Anyways, kind of talking about this video, but not really. Because, I just subscribed to this guy to watch the insanity of what he produces. And, like, every now and then, there'll be something that I want to talk about, but not really. Like, he just has really hot, bad takes. Like, this is a bad, hot take, about Igtheism. And I got to 3 minutes, 26 seconds before I was like, my word, just a lot of poisoning the well here. Now, he did good research. Props to that. He looked into the history. It's like, here's this guy, yada, 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 blah, 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 all that stuff. Yeah, good job. But that's just visceral, angry, dripping venom that he has for this term and terminology and the people behind it and what it is in general. It's just manifestly evident. And he says, he doesn't like it. And I think when examining anything, you need to, as best you can, set your emotions aside. Now, obviously, you're not going to be able to do it 100%. Understood. Nope, not, that it's human to have emotions. But when trying to be critical, trying to be logical, trying to be skeptical, I find that it's very important to set my emotions aside so I can properly analyze an argument. And if I'm too upset, if I'm too irritated about the topic, then I give it to somebody else and say, hey, can you do this without emotion? Because I can't. Leave it to someone else to do it who doesn't care about the topic like I do. That way I can get a dispassionate analysis of whatever it is. And in this case, it's Igtheism and how it's ignorant. Oh, it's so ignorant. Oh, he'll explain why it's so ignorant. Oh, yes. And then he says it's ignorant to hold the position. And then he actually has references. So again, props to him. Oh my word, actually having references. This is why I subscribe to this channel. Also because, like I said, I like to talk about every now and then something that he does because I am so impressed by his work ethic in regards to citations and things like that. But where he fails me is, fails my standard, whatever, who cares, is like, just be a little bit more logical, a little less emotional, maybe. I don't know. But I get emotional too. So, it's fine though when I do it, though. So what is the term ichthyeus? He actually covers it pretty decently. But I want to cover it because, it's my channel, so I'll do it, So ichtheism, what is it? It's, been coined by this guy, whatever. What does it mean, though? Okay, it's a theological non-cognitivism. What does that mean? So it means every theological position is too much about the concept of God, and so there's no concept, whatever, to label as the concept of God, and, it's compatible with weak theism and agnosticism, and I've seen other versions of this defined as just the stance that you don't know what God is. The word God is meaningless. And I've seen it defined this way on other pages and by people from time to time. Maybe not official sources. So I'm kind of going into the zeitgeist of, people's blogs and stuff like that. People that are just having conversations, what they think out loud, that sort of thing. Okay. Based on what I've heard and read and, remember hearing and all that. So hold on a moment. Yes. Again, Once again, my voice wants to do weird things while I'm trying to record. James Amperson, give me a smiley face in chat. All right, had to mention that because no reason. So Igtheism I've seen defined as like atheist and theist, they're wrong because they both use the word God and the word God has no meaning. So everybody is wrong. And I'm like, yeah, but Igtheist, you just used the word God when you said the word God has no meaning. Like, yes, but, deconverted man, I said that it had no meaning. And so anyone that uses it, it doesn't make sense to use it. But you did use it when you said it had no meaning. Well, yeah, but that's like, like, how do you say it without saying it? I'm just saying, like, everybody's wrong that uses it. Yeah, but you used it, so you're wrong. No. And it goes back and forth. And in fact, in the video that I'm kind of not really talking about, but I kind of am talking about, because, like, I'm kind of, like, riffing on the video. I'm, like, not playing you guys, girls, and robots, the video. You can go check out the video if you want. I don't, I'm not here to, like, slam dunk on every single logical fallacy he produces in the video. It's a lot of poisoning the well. I'll leave it at that. Within those first 3 minutes, it was a lot of poisoning the well. So I didn't need to keep, all I would do is be like, poisoning the well, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that would be, and that's not really an analysis that would be interesting. I could do it, though, but I just did it, I guess. But at any rate, so the position is true. That is to say, the word God isn't a word that we have a solid agreement upon. Now, fair enough, not many words are kind of like that. There are ambiguous words out there. But I would challenge whoever to come up with a word that's as ambiguous as God. Like, some words have multiple meanings. The word love. Now, the Greeks, I think, got it right. They had, like, different versions of the word love. They had, philios and agape, and, they had eros, and, it's like, why can't we have different words for love? That way, when you go, I love you, like, to your friend, you don't have to be like, I love you as a friend. You could just say, whatever the Greek word is, that I can't remember now. Greek word for friendship, love. What is it? Come on. Philia. Which I mean, that sounds, in today's, when you hear the word philia, it's usually attached to things that aren't good in today's day and age. So, I guess that would be kind of weird, but it'd be like, hey, James, I philia you. I don't know. But my point is, it'd be easier than be like, I love you as a friend, like no homo, right? Like, oh my God, snuffy wuffy kiss. Hey, how's it going? Yeah. He hasn't been around in a while. All right. Anyways, so, the word love has many meanings, but it has a singular meaning of affection at the very least. So we all kind of know what we mean by that word. It's sure, it has multiple meanings, but we all understand those multiple meanings, broadly speaking, and we all understand what we mean when we say it. And maybe you could come up with other examples of words that are more ambiguous than that word, and I would love to get a list of that, whatever. And ultimately, though, the word God is become, whether by cultural integration, or some might say appropriation, or however you want to put it, universal, in that things are called God that in their native tongue aren't actually the word God. Like, the Japanese have kami-sama. Now, sama is a prefix which means king or queen. So kami is spirit. So kami-sama is king or queen spirit. That's not the same as God. That's not the word God. There is no word God in Japanese. It would have to be just Romanized God. So but you, for sake of convenience of, I guess, English speakers, you call it God. Just like Japan is not Japan, it's Nippon. Why do we call it Japan? Because we decided it was Japan, Like, that's what it's called, Nippon, Nihongo, So it's wild, but this word is so different for so many people that, the Native Americans, different tribes, they don't have God. They have spirit. They have the Great Mother, or they have the tree spirit, or this spirit, or that spirit, and so the word God doesn't even apply there, but you might say their God this, their God that, and what you mean is their spirit, or their greatest version of that. But it does break down. What does it mean, God? And I've asked this question many times. What do you mean by God? And even more importantly than that, how did you arrive at that conclusion? What method did you use to figure out what God is? And that's one of the things this guy complains about in this video is logical positivism, because he hates logical positivism and he hates empiricism, I guess. And I'm fine with both of them. Because I love logic, I guess. But of course, he's probably going to go with the statement, well, you said if there's no, let me see if I can get it bigger here. No, it doesn't. Okay, so there's no empirical evidence that could possibly establish either the truth or falsity of the statement. That statement is meaningless. And he'll probably say something like, what's the empirical evidence for that statement? Oh, checkmate. As if that's like a big discovery. It's not, because the empirical evidence that you need empirical evidence is the fact that you just asked for empirical evidence. And yes, that is indeed the argument for that. And logic does work that way. You can go, what's the empirical evidence that logic functions? A equals B equals C, A equals C. There you go. That's the empirical evidence that it works. You can see it because I can write it down. So there you go. It's empirical. But, some people really don't like logical positivism or empiricism or whatever, because it gets in the way of believing in, spiritual mumbo jumbo. And that's kind of poisoning the well as well. I'm just, tossing that out there because, But Igtheism, is that an ignorant position? No, it's an honest position. I don't know what God is. Now, that's why I brought up the zeitgeist earlier of the words change over time. People use words in different way over time. And in fact, we've seen that. I've seen that in my own lifetime with the word man and woman. I've seen that change. And I'll admit, it's hard for me to accept. It's hard for me to understand. But it's like, okay, I mean, I struggled with it. I had to get to the bottom of it, understand the logic of it, understand the science of it, etc. But it's like, okay, this is this thing, and this is how this works. All right, fine. I think that it could be better presented in certain circumstances. I think certain phrases are still too loose and weird. But at any rate, my problems with it have been, I think, somewhat resolved. And I go, okay, well, there's multiple meanings to these words that didn't, in my I could be wrong. I thought they didn't have more than one meaning for a long time. And it appears I'm not alone on that. It appears that many people felt that way as well. And to suddenly be told, oh, no, there's more than one meaning is kind of like jarring. It's like, what? There is? When? Since when? Since now? Well, actually, since always. You didn't really even think about that. Oh, huh? So words change. The word atheist changed. The word atheist changed from this static position of there's no God to I don't believe in God. And then the theists tried to label that new atheism. And whether that label was successful or not, it's like, yeah, whatever, who cares? There's really nothing new about atheism, one, and secondly, okay, and you still don't have an argument, so it doesn't matter, right? So I think that Igtheist also has morphed and changed over time, is what I was getting at there. And so the zeitgeist of it might mean something like, I don't know what the word God is, so I'm an atheist. But that's not the classical definition. The classical definition is that the word God is so incoherent that everybody is wrong that uses the word God, except for me, of course, because, there's a special exemption, because I'm only using the word God to say that the word God is meaningless. So it's fine. I'm allowed to say that. It's like a special, okay, that's special bleeding, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. Or the version you saw on Wikipedia was more like, all theism assumes too much about God. The word God is meaningless. Reject that. So atheists could still use the word God in that scenario under that definition of atheism, and they'd be fine. So what does the word mean then? If there's now multiple meanings of the word atheist, then what does it mean? You could try to be like, well, let's appeal to the definition. And you say, well, this source and this source says it's that, and that's the definition. And I go, yeah, but you've just performed a logical fallacy by appealing to definition. Because, yes, that is how it is, but also no, because you're dealing with natural language. Once you have set in stone your argument and said this word means X, whatever that is. This word means this one thing in this argument, which is why in my book, Logic of Morals, I defined every word, including the word A, because I wanted to make sure that you understood what every word meant. And I used a combination of online definitions as well as my own definitions to do so. So I really wanted to make it clear what these words meant. But of course, how deep does that rabbit hole go? Because after I've given you the definition, well, I didn't give you a definition of every single word in that definition. So now do I have to do that? And then I have to do that, and I keep doing that forever? At some point, I have to assume that you probably understand these words to mean the same things that I think that they mean. And this is the problem with what is called natural language. There's no way to fix it. As far as I know, there are artificial languages that people have created where there's one meaning to one word. Whether you can speak that language or not, I'm not sure. How deep that language goes, I'm not sure. But people have attempted to do this, and there are some languages like this that are artificial in nature. And in fact, some artificial terms that didn't exist have been adopted into natural language. Internet. What does the internet mean? Not really. What does the internet mean? But does anyone really call it the internet, or does everyone now call it the net? You surf in the net, that used to be a thing, not as much anymore. You log on, you stream. Okay. These words don't really, what does that mean? I'm online. What do you mean? What does online mean? I'm on the internet right now. What does that mean? So it means something to us, but saying what that means and it isn't necessarily as rigid as some might like, myself included. I would love if every word had only one meaning because it makes things easier. But that's not how language functions. That's not how people interact with definitions and terms. And fighting against that is, I think, you're welcome to do so, but you're fighting a losing battle. There's a YouTuber who's pretty popular, whose name I won't mention. People know who I'm talking about if I say it, who has argued that the word atheist should mean there is no God. And that the Encyclopedia of Stanford, that should be or it might be a different encyclopedia, but regardless, that says it that way, and so everyone should use it that way. It just makes things easier. And I'm like, well, the argument's fine, but nobody cares. Like, we're not going to do it. It's just that's it. You're. I get what you're saying. Your argument's fine, but nobody cares. So it's a case where the argument, sure, it's valid, and it could even be sound, although there was a potential possibility of a fallacy I did locate, but it was like very minor possibility. So I was like, but it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. because nobody wants to use that version of the word. Everyone wants to use this version of the word. So it's highly possible that the word Igtheism has come to mean at least two things. One is the official definition of the word God doesn't mean anything, and so it's useless and it's pointless, and everybody that uses God doesn't mean anything. Or the one for Wikipedia, which is like theism is the one that has the problem because they assume too much about God. Or the new one, which might be, I don't know what the bleep the word God is, so therefore I'm an igtheist. And I have described myself as a weak igtheist, going with that version of igtheism, going with the version of igtheism that would be seen as weaker than the other ones. That I don't know what the word God is. That's honest. That's absolute. I don't know what you mean by that word. So in that sense, I'm an igtheist, but I'm not the strong igtheist that would say the word God is completely meaningless, because there are meanings to it. And yes, the theist does assume too much about it, but that doesn't make it completely useless to use. And I don't see that as a reason to not use the word. I do think that we should be skeptical of what it is because there is no empirical evidence for what God is, which is also mentioned at some point in this video. He mentioned this article here, and I'm not sure if I can get it big or not, but we apply the criteria. So it says, we must adapt the pursuit of truth to the empirical method. If we apply that criteria to the issue of the word God, we must ask, what's the empirical evidence to establish the truth of the statement there is a God? If there's no empirical evidence that could establish the truth or falsity of the statement, then the statement is meaningless. And then he termed it agnostic, explaining that agnostic is one who says the statement there is a God is meaningless by empirical criteria. Going by that definition, you note that definition is different from the one that appeared on Wikipedia. The word has already changed its meaning from one instance to the other. Well, somebody works on Wikipedia, so that can change. Yes. And if you Google up igtheist, you'll get a few different definitions of it, and people talking about what it is, and is it a good stance to take, etc., and debating on whether or not it's ignorant to hold this position. No, it's not ignorant. There isn't any empirical evidence of whatever the bleep God is. So why should you believe in it? I don't know. Your bad arguments certainly don't convince me, but that's all they've got. That's all the theist has is arguments. No evidence, no test. And by the way, empirical evidence, I would have added also repeatable test. This guy didn't, but I would have. Basically the scientific method. We can't apply that to God. How do you know that? Because I said so. How do you know that, though? Because God can't be scientifically tested. But how do you know that God can't be scientifically tested? Because it just can't. Well, that's not an answer. You don't know that. So, igtheism, whatever it means, you can do that for your argument. You can do that in your essay. You can say igtheism means the following and set forth in stone what it means to you and then to the reader reading your argument. But in casual conversation like we're having now, it means whatever the bleep I want it to mean. It should mean at least one of these versions of igtheism just for clarity's sake, but it doesn't have to, because words are wacky and wild. Now, I think we should try our best to define tricky words that we're not used to so that we understand each other. But once that has been done, we can assume that everyone understands what we mean and move on. So I think everyone in chat, without looking at chat, because I haven't been ignoring you for a little bit here, everyone understands that there's multiple versions of igtheism at this point. We look at the newspaper cited, we look at the Wikipedia, we can see that there's different ways of understanding what the word is. And then ultimately, humans say, nah, this is the way I want to use it. And then it's like, well, now what? But is it an ignorant position to take? No, absolutely not. Because God, whatever God is not something like anything else that you can point to and say, there is God right there. See that? That's God. There is nothing to point to. There is nothing to test. There is nothing to probe. There is only the definitions given by the religion itself, which is an appeal to definition. So by thinking Christians' criteria of not liking empiricism, the word Christian has no meaning either, and should be discarded because, well, we can't use empiricism anymore, so we can't verify what it means to be a Christian either. In fact, we can't use any words at all thinking Christian because all words are tied to empirical and or testable methodologies. So we can't speak anymore, or rather, you can't speak anymore using your idea here, thinking Christian. Unless maybe you only want to employ the criteria when it suits your argument to do so. And I think that might be the case. I could be wrong. But being a hypocrite's not a logical fallacy, so I guess I have to let that one go. Oh well. Alright, so are you an igtheist or a weak igtheist as I've coined it? Or do you not care about the labels? Are they useful? Are they unuseful? What do you guys, girls and robots, think? Let me know, what you think in the comments once you can do so. I'll look at some of these things that are said. And let's see. And there's Blaster Master. I've got God equals square root of -1. I've got Bub Snacks. Who else? That's it, I think. Yeah, that's everyone in chat. But yes, I'm a soft atheist. I'm going to heck for not believing God. So it would be weak atheist, not soft. I guess you could be soft if you want to be. I mean, sure, why not? Hard atheist, soft atheist, why not? Sure. I don't really care about labels myself. Yeah, I mean, they're kind of a feature and a bug, They're useful, and then there's limitations to them, and, it's wild. But anyway, so that's it. Like I said, not really complaining about the video itself per se. I didn't even play any of the video, but it made me do this video, so I don't know what the hell this is anymore. Let me know what I just did in the comments below. You can bench over 200. You're a strong atheist. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go. There's another version for strong. Wait, myth atheist. Whoa. Misantheism is the hatred of God. Ooh, cool. I like that. There you go. You could be that. Sure, why not? All right, well, look. If we don't have empirical evidence, a repeatable test, or a valid and sound argument, probably should be skeptical. And since the uploader of the video I'm kind of poking at here without poking at it, he didn't have that because he had multiple poisonings of the well, we should be skeptical of his argument. Now, my argument here, I did one poisoning of the well, but I admitted to it and I threw it out, so it doesn't count. So mine is flawless. So you don't have to be skeptical of mine, but you can be, because being skeptical is awesome. And it comes with ice cream. What? What do you mean there's no ice cream? I was told there is ice cream. Ah, you got me. Until next time. Do that. That's it. We're done.